you ever noticed that some of the hardest valleys in life come right after you've attained the highest mountaintops? You finish a big project and the next day you feel strangely empty. You step out on faith and see God's answer, and a week later you're questioning everything. Dave talks about the more he reads the Bible, the more questions he has. You know, we all do that. We all have that. Your experience is an answered prayer and then a new challenge besides you, blindsides you. You see God's work in a powerful way, but days later you feel exhausted, empty, and even discouraged. You feel close to God at a retreat or a worship service, but Monday morning comes and all the joy evaporates. Elijah knew that feeling. And this is a perfect description of Elijah's story. In 1 Kings 18, he's on Mount Carmel, boldly facing 450 prophets of Baal. God answers his prayer with fire from heaven. The people turn back to the Lord. Rain comes after 3.5 years of drought. One of the greatest victories in the Old Testament. But flip the page to 1 Kings 19, and Elijah's running for his life. He's afraid, discouraged, asking God to let him die. From victory to valley, from fire to fear, from courage to collapse. So the question this morning is how do you keep going when your spiritual high turns into a deep low? Today we begin a new series entitled Thriving in the Valleys. Sometimes our spiritual lives feel like a series of peaks and valleys. One moment we feel like we're soaring high, and the next we experience a crushing low. This is a series about when we do and when we don't feel God's presence. We examine the journey of faith through the stories of biblical characters: Elijah, Paul, Moses, Daniel, Joseph, and Peter. Along the way, we'll learn about contentment, doubt, and trust, gratitude, God's sovereignty, and the mission of Jesus. But first, we'll start with Elijah's story and see 3 truths about thriving, not just surviving, in the valleys of victory and depression. The goal of our message: through our times of victory and of depression, God shows himself to be a faithful provider. Today we'll be in 1 Kings 18, 20 through 46 and 19, 1 through 8. And because of the length of the text, I'm going to summarize 18, 20 through 45. So let's open with our first observation. Victories don't shield us from the valleys. The sun is beating down on Mount Carmel. King Ahab has summoned the people of Israel, and they gather in a restless crowd. On one side stand 450 prophets of Baal in colorful garments, their heads high. On the other side, one man, Elijah, the prophet of the Lord. Elijah's voice cuts through the murmurs. How long will you waver between 2 opinions? If the Lord is God, follow him. Baal is God, follow him. Crowd silent. Then Elijah issues a challenge. We'll each prepare a sacrifice. We won't light the fire. We'll each call on our God, and the one who answers by fire, he is God. The people agree. The prophets of Baal go first. From morning till noon they dance, shout, and plead, "O Baal, answer us." But the air is silent. Not a spark. Nothing. Nada. Around noon, Elijah smirks and says, shout louder. Maybe he's thinking. Maybe he's busy. Maybe he's traveling. Or maybe he's asleep and needs wakening. They shout louder. They slash themselves with knives until blood flows. Wow. Pretty dramatic, huh? They keep at it until evening, but nothing happens. No voice, no fire. But now it's Elijah's turn. He calls the people close. He repairs the broken altar of the Lord with 12 stones, one for each tribe of Israel. He arranges the wood, places the sacrifice on it, and digs a trench around the altar. Then he does something crazy. He has water poured over it. Once, twice, 3 times until the trench is overflowing. And then Elijah prays. O Lord God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, let it be known today that you are God in Israel. Answer me so these people will know you, Lord, and turn their hearts back to you. In an instant, fire falls from heaven. It consumes the sacrifice, the wood, the stones, the dust, even the water in the trench. The people dropped to their faces and cried, "The Lord, He is God, the Lord, He is God." Elijah orders the prophets of Baal seized, and they're taken to the Kishon Valley and put to death. Then he turns to Ahab and says, "Go, eat and drink, for I hear the sound of heavy rain." Elijah climbs to the top of the mountain, bows low, and prays. 7 times he sends his servant to look towards the sea. 6 times nothing. On the 7th, a small, little, tiny cloud, the size of a man's hand, rises in the distance. Soon the sky grows black with clouds, and the wind howls, and heavy rain falls, ending the drought at last. Now, if you ended the story there, you'd think Elijah was pretty unstoppable. Wow, what a guy. Elijah experiences a mountaintop moment, a major victory, fire from heaven, the defeat of Baal's prophets, and the public vindication of God. This series focuses on thriving through the valleys of life, and one could ask if I'm considering the victories of life in a valley. Well, the answer is yes. They can become a valley when we forget to build on the victories of life. These victories can be but temporary relief from the valleys of life when the valleys become the sole focus of our lives. Spiritual triumphs don't erase emotional fragility. Elijah's boldness on Carmel is found by fear and flight. But right after the victory, Jezebel sends him a message that we read about in 1 Kings 19, 1-3. Hello. And Ahab told Jezebel all that Elijah had done, also how he had executed the prophets with the sword. Then Jezebel sent a messenger to Elijah saying, "So let the gods do to me and more also if I do not make your life as the life of one of them by tomorrow about this time." And when he saw that, he arose and ran for his life and went to Beersheba, which belongs to Judah, and left his servant there. 1 Kings 19, 1-3. Elijah, the man who'd faced down hundreds, runs. Why did Elijah flee for his life? He's exhausted physically, emotionally, and spiritually. The adrenaline is gone. The enemy knows when to strike right after a win. Think about professional athletes. My buddy David, he loves professional football. But I can guarantee you that a lot of successful coaches, right after they've had a touchdown scored on their team, immediately set up for that kickoff return all the way down the field, or the home run pass on the first play right after that, knowing that the other team's going to be losing a little bit of focus there because of that great touchdown they scored. It happens. We kind of focus on celebrating the victory instead of building on the victory. Celebrate the good play instead of building on it. But you see, God's power doesn't eliminate our humanity. That's true. It meets us in it. When you feel guilty or confused for slipping into the valley, after a great victory, you need to know it is something we all face. You may be facing it yourself, but it's something that all the rest of us has faced too. We just need to know how to get out of the valley. Elijah demonstrates a crucial lesson. A spiritual high, no matter how powerful, does not make us immune to the challenges of fears and threats of this world. Our spiritual journeys are not a straight line upward. They're not a series of peaks and valleys. David once described it as running a race of hurdles, jumping over hurdles. The danger of the valley isn't just what is hard, it can change how we see reality. And that's what happened to Elijah. We read 1 Kings 19:4. But he himself went a day's journey into the wilderness and came and sat down under a broom tree. And he prayed that he might die and said, "It is enough. Now, Lord, take my life, for I am no better than my fathers." 1 Kings 19:4. If Mount Carmel shows us that victories don't shield us from valleys, a shrub shows us how quickly a valley can distort our perspective. Which brings us to our second point today. Valleys can distort our perspective, leading to depression. That word's depression is kind of close to me. When Marion died a few years ago, I was there. And my doctor asked me, when she was talking to me, she says, "Well, if you're feeling depressed, I've got something for you. You can help you with that." No, that's not what's going to help me. That's not going to do it. Elijah, who experienced the victory of a lifetime, is now deep in the valley, fear, despair, and depression. Anyone who's been there, or if they're there now. Elijah travels a day in the wilderness fleeing from Jezebel. He sits down under a shrub and asks the Lord to take his life. This is the same man who just prayed to draw down fire from heaven. Here's someone something we shouldn't miss. What Elijah does once he hit the proverbial valley, he isolates himself. Don't we do that when we're depressed? We don't seek help. We isolate it. We wallow in it. Elijah isolates himself, prays to die, feels utterly alone. Let me ask you, how many people helped Elijah when he took on and later killed all the prophets of Baal? One. Who was it? God. Now that Elijah is in the valley, what's changed? Fear has taken over. Fear distorts reality and isolates us. But God doesn't abandon us in our fear. Sometimes we may feel that way, but God does not abandon us. He's there. He comes close, actually. Elijah is so focused on fear that he forgets the God who gave him the victory. When we are in the valley, I want to be careful how I say this, but we can become selfish. When I'm in the valley, all I think about is me and the valley. I forget about my friends and my God. The only person I know who can take on 450 people at once is Chuck Norris. You know? Elijah had someone, though, bigger. He had God on his side. The problem with valleys is they just don't drain your energy. They cloud your vision. It's like driving in a dense fog. You ever done that? Well, if you're on the interstate, that's a real scary thing. That's a real scary thing. The road hasn't changed, but your perspective has. Everything feels uncertain. You don't have any reference points anymore, do you? None. Same thing with the whiteout snow, right? Same thing. Valleys can create a spiritual fog, and that makes God's promises hard to see. Your problems look bigger than they really are. Your hope feels smaller than it actually is. Your future seems darker than it truly is. When you're in the valley, don't make permanent decisions based on temporary feelings. First, stop. Second, pray. Let God's perspective seek that before you move forward. Because our focus is on the valley and ourselves, we forget something important. We're not alone. It's like I told Ken last week when I baptized him. He now has the Holy Spirit living within him. So do we. We're not alone. The same God who gave you the victory is the same God who's walking with you in the valleys. Thankfully, God doesn't just leave Elijah there in despair. He steps in with exactly what Elijah needs. We read about in 1 Kings 19, 5 through 9. Then as he lay and slept under the broom tree, suddenly an angel touched him and said to him, "Arise and eat." And then he looked, and there by his head was a cake baked on coals and a jar of water. So he ate and drank. He lay down again, and the angel of the Lord came back the second time and touched him and says, "Arise and eat, because the journey is too great for you." So he arose and ate and drank, and he went in the strength of that food for 40 days and 40 nights as far as Horeb, the mountain of God. And there he went into a cave and spent the night in that place, and behold, the word of the Lord came to him, and he said to him, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" 1 Kings 19, 5 through 9. Point 3. God strengthened us in the valleys to prepare us for victories. Before we receive word from Jezebel, look at something with me back in 1 Kings 18:46. Then the hand of the Lord came upon Elijah, and he girded up his loins and ran ahead of Ahab to the entrance of Jezreel so he wouldn't get caught in all that rain storm that was about to hit him. See, God energized Elijah with power. Yet, here we are. Power's gone, the valley's come. Did God take away the power, or did Elijah relinquish it? Exhausted, Elijah collapses under the broom tree and drifts into sleep. Suddenly, a gentle touch, an angel is there saying, "Get up and eat." Beside him, a loaf of bread baked over hot coals and a jar of water. Well, think about that. What must that have smelled like? Fresh baked bread? You ever smell fresh baked bread? It's a heavenly thing. Wow. You think that would lift your spirits just a little bit? Elijah eats and drinks and lies back down, too weary to do any more. Second time, the angel touches him. "Get up and eat, for the journey is too much for you." He eats again. And the strength from that simple meal carries him for 40 days and 40 nights. I think if I was going to prepare for 40 days and 40 nights of nothing, I'd want a feast, but, really just a couple loaves of bread and some water is enough. All the way to Horeb, the mountain of God, where he finds shelter in a cave and prepares to hear from the Lord. Given the great victory God performed through Elijah and the fact that Elijah is asking God to take his life, one would think that God would be upset with Elijah. We just talked about this morning in class of Jesus kind of upbraiding Peter, scolding him in a gentle way, but still. But God doesn't scold Elijah for being worn out. He doesn't say, "Get it together, prophet." Instead, he gives him exactly what he needs: rest, food, and the strength to take the next step. God sends an angel, not with a sermon, but with food, rest, and gentle care. God knows that before you can face the next victory, you may need to recover from the last battle. Think about how athletes recover after a big game. They don't go straight into another one. They hydrate, they eat, they rest. Recovery is part of preparation. Rest is not laziness, it's obedience when God calls you to it. God's care often comes through simple, ordinary means: meal, sleep, a kind word, or time in His Word. Don't rush out of your valley. Let God strengthen you there so that you'll be ready for the victories ahead. Elijah's not scolded for his depression. He's nourished for his journey ahead. God was preparing Elijah for Mount Horeb, where he would hear God's gentle whisper and receive his next assignment. In your lowest moments, God doesn't just demand strength, He supplies it. His provision is tailored to your need. So the question is, where are you today? Are you on the mountain or are you in the valley? If you're in the valley right now, maybe even right after a victory, God hasn't abandoned you. God is present in both. He sends fire on the mountain and bread in the wilderness. Trust Him, not just in your victories, but in your vulnerability. The temptation to feel isolated and alone cuts us off from God and His people. To combat this, surround yourself with people who will speak God's truth into your life. Maybe you're in a valley today, spiritually exhausted, feeling alone, wondering where God is. Today is the day to let Him meet you there. Come forward today and come to Jesus, rest in His presence, and receive his strength for what's ahead. Whatever your need this morning, will you come as we stand and sing the song of invitation?